Might have a few more chairs. We're moving a little off of the original lineup because the topic of my talk is currently in O'Hare Airport and it's Snowy Airport, so I may have to get out here and go pick her up, so thank you. The slide before that had my information, Yates, Associate Curator from the Museum of Art and Craft. We don't need to spend time on that. We're here to talk about Simone Lee's crop rotation, which is one of the exhibits opening at KMAC this Friday, which I was asked to talk about tonight. When I first came to KMAC about 2.5 years ago, we pinpointed artists that we thought would really kind of hold up our mission of trying to find work that combined traditional craft, those definitions that people rely on to try to talk about craft, which is difficult, and contemporary art. Those have mainly manifested in sort of group exhibitions, but for solo exhibitions, Simone Lee was an early person that I thought would be perfect for the museum, and we kicked the idea for a show down the road for several years, and finally on Friday it's opening. And the reason why she's so significant to me in this sort of intersection of art and craft is because she looks at craft techniques and craft practices almost exclusively. So she'll travel, and she's very much a kind of research artist. She'll go to Africa, she'll go to India, she'll go to places primarily where indigenous cultures are still practicing craft activity that they've been doing for a long time. And she'll look primarily at women and the kind of things that they make and build. And one of the things I think she's probably sensitive to, Americans are divorced from, is a lot of the history of what the labor practices might have been. So a woman living, say, in Namibia or India, where she's visited recently, probably still has a sort of role or a kind of task that they've been doing for quite a long time. So she takes that, appropriates that craft technique and brings it back to her studio practice and makes contemporary conceptual art out of it. So one of her kind of iconic works is this. It's a cowrie shell. And she makes tons of these, so they're all untitled, and they're primarily out of terracotta and porcelain. And for her, this is what she calls a resonant object, and she works a lot with resonant objects, found objects, primarily that she can kind of appropriate or just sort of place in the middle of her installation. And the cowrie shell is used for adornment. I'm sure you've seen a very similar kind of object, but it's also used for currency. And these specifically, for her, are cast from watermelons. So what she's doing is she's taking, and this is one of the things that she does quite frequently, is she'll take these craft techniques that we're talking about and mix them with sort of these objects or these tropes of sort of black subjectivity, where, say, the watermelon is this like charged object in sort of black history, and so she'll take that and mend it with a craft technique to try to bring together a sort of cultural identity and sort of a reclamation of a process or a terminology or an object that had different meaning at one point. So she tries to reverse the meaning. So the shell is a big reoccurring motif for her. And this is also a cowrie shell covered in roses. And the multiple roses that she has references piecework, which in lots of industry is how people get paid for the amount of objects they make, not necessarily for the hourly rate. So think of garment industry workers getting paid for whatever zipper they put in or button they sew on. So that type of work is important to her studio practice. So she's constantly making these, coming up with things she could repeatedly make all day long. And plus, it's a cool time for her to reflect and think about what the process means in coordination in connection to her work. This is another union of a sort of craft term. Wedgwood is a type of porcelain, and particularly the pale blue color was famous in Jasperware, and as Wedgwood ceramics were sort of discovered. It was like he was a craftsman, he was a chemist to Josiah Wedgwood. And so she's referencing sort of a ceramic history, but also the banana or the plantain is sort of a colonial, vegetable or fruit that is very much a potent symbol of, sort of slave labor, colonial labor. And the laundry bucket is also a recurring theme for her. It's something primarily what she references women's work, and so laundry women could use these buckets for, and these are all found in India, for laundry or carrying things, or putting things in when they're picking fruit. This is also a piece that will be in our exhibition called Lowrider. Because most of her work is about female work and sort of the way that females are oftentimes anonymous workers, and yet in the history of civilization they have been, healers. They've fed us, they protected us, they clothed us, not just as mothers but as workers. And so this is a sculpture. This is goat's milk soap in a found vintage baby carriage. Those are terracotta breasts. So the mother figure, and the idea, and the breast figure is also a kind of connection to the almost prehistoric object making, where if you look at prehistoric sites, many things are cone shaped, like the yurt, and the conical shape refers to like the belly and breasts and things that would be supportive and life-giving. So she constantly reflects them. Let's take a couple